The chandeliers inside the Manhattan Global Finance Gala glittered like frozen stars. But Claire Donovan could barely breathe beneath their cold light. Her palms were damp, her heart a trembling drum in her chest, and the soft fabric of her navy dress felt too tight around her waist, right where her fragile pregnancy rested. She had come tonight only to support her husband, CEO Jason Whitford, a man who once promised stability and protection. Instead, she watched him step onto the stage with a woman whose beauty felt cruelly effortless. Naomi Blake, the rising supermodel with a camera-ready smile, looped her arm through Jason's like she'd practiced it for weeks. Claire's stomach dropped. Jason leaned into the microphone, his voice smooth as glass. "This is the woman who represents the future of Whitford Capital," he announced, not even glancing at the wife, standing breathless in the corner. Cameras flashed rapid, hungry, unrelenting. Then, with a smile Claire had never seen before, Jason added, "And as of tonight, my marriage is over." A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Isn't his wife pregnant?" Claire's knees buckled. The floor blurred. The back of her dress darkened with a sudden warmth. She didn't want to look. She didn't need to. She recognized the warning sign. Stress. Too much stress. The doctor had told her pregnancy was high risk, but she had never imagined the danger would begin here, under 1,000 glittering lights and 1,000,000 watching eyes. Jason didn't even step toward her. But someone else did. A tall man near the edge of the crowd, Bennett Hail, Jason's billionaire rival, watched with an expression that wasn't pity, but something sharper. Something protective, something she didn't yet understand. Claire swayed, breath thinning. And in that moment, her world broke cleanly in half. Bennett took one decisive step toward her, just as Claire felt the room tilt violently out of focus. Claire Donovan had once believed in quiet kinds of love, the kind built through shared morning coffees, whispered plans for the future, and the steady comfort of a man who promised he'd never leave. She married Jason Whitford with that hope in her chest, convinced she had finally found a partner who valued loyalty as much as ambition. But reality had a colder voice, one she started hearing long before the gala humiliation. It began subtly, late-night meetings that stretched past midnight, the scent of a perfume Claire didn't wear lingering on Jason's suit, his new obsession with image and prestige. Whitford Capital was rising fast, and Jason rose with it, shedding old layers of himself the way snakes shed skin. Unfortunately, Claire was one of those layers. Still, Claire tried. She picked up more consulting work despite her pregnancy fatigue. She cooked dinners he rarely ate, offered support he rarely acknowledged, and tried her best to create stability for little Ella, her 4-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. Jason had insisted he'd treat Ella as his own, but over the months, his affection for her thinned into tolerance, then into irritation. One night, 2 months before the gala, Claire had placed Ella's handmade drawing onto Jason's desk, a smiling family of 3 holding hands. Jason barely glanced at it before tossing it aside with a curt, "Not now, Claire. I have real work to handle." Ella saw. Claire saw. A crack formed. The second crack came when Claire discovered she was pregnant. She had walked into Jason's office, glowing with hope, only to find him staring at a modeling ad featuring Naomi Blake. He barely listened when Claire told him. He only said, "This is terrible timing. You know how investors hate instability." Instability. That was the word he used for their unborn child. From that moment, Claire's heart knew the truth, even if her mind wasn't ready to face it. Jason wasn't drifting away. He was already gone. But the final blow came 3 weeks before the gala. Claire overheard him on a call saying, "Claire's good on paper, but she's not CEO wife material." Her breath caught. He wasn't even hiding it anymore. By then, Claire was living with morning sickness, high-risk pregnancy warnings, and the growing terror that she was raising Ella and carrying a baby whose father no longer wanted them. She should have left. She should have packed her bags and walked out of Whitford Tower that day. But instead, she held on to the last thread of hope, unaware it was about to snap in front of the entire world. And she had no idea that the man who would help her pick up the pieces was already watching her life silently crumble. The waiting room at Boston Mercy Women's Clinic smelled faintly of lavender and disinfectant, a strange mix that usually calmed Claire Donovan. But today, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She kept them clasped over her stomach, feeling the fragile pulse of the life growing inside her, a life she already feared she might lose. Claire Donovan? The nurse's gentle voice pulled her up to her feet. Inside the dimly lit ultrasound room, the monitor flickered to life. For a moment, everything felt still, quiet, sacred. A tiny heartbeat thumped softly through the speakers, and Claire's breath trembled with relief. But then she saw the doctor's brow crease. "Is everything okay?" Claire whispered, already bracing herself. Dr. Halden hesitated a moment too long. "Your baby's heartbeat is strong," she began carefully, "but the placenta is positioned unusually low. Combined with your stress levels and your medical history, you're at high risk for complications." Complications. The word sliced through Claire like ice. "You need to avoid emotional distress," the doctor continued. "You need support, rest, and stability. Any spike in stress could trigger bleeding. I need you to really listen. This pregnancy is delicate." Support. Stability. Words that once defined her marriage, but no longer belonged to her. Claire nodded silently, blinking back tears. She wanted to tell the doctor the truth, that she was living inside a storm she couldn't escape, that the man she loved barely looked at her anymore. That Ella sensed the tension and had started waking up from nightmares again. That Claire no longer recognized her own home as a safe place. But she said none of it. Instead, she asked, "Can I still work?" "Yes," the doctor replied, "but carefully. No heavy lifting, no intense stress. You're carrying precious cargo. Protect yourself." Protect herself. She wasn't sure she remembered how. As she walked out of the clinic, the cold Boston air stung her face. She pulled her coat tight and rested a hand over her stomach. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I'm really trying." Her phone buzzed. A text from Jason. "Don't forget the Whitford dinner tomorrow. Wear something elegant. Investors will be watching." No, how did the appointment go? No, is the baby okay? Her throat tightened. But she typed back anyway. "I'll be there." Because she still believed foolishly that if she steadied herself, maybe Jason would steady with her. What she didn't know was that tomorrow's dinner would be the beginning of a heartbreak so deep her doctor's warning would echo in her ears for weeks. The night of the Whitford investor dinner arrived far too quickly. Claire stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple black dress she had pulled from the back of her closet. She didn't have the energy or the budget for anything new. Her reflection looked tired, fragile, older than 29. She pressed a hand to her stomach and whispered a promise to stay steady, no matter what Jason threw at her tonight. At the restaurant's private rooftop suite overlooking Boston Harbor, Jason was already in full performance mode. He flashed charming smiles, shook hands aggressively, and bragged about Whitford Capital's unmatched trajectory. Claire drifted a few steps behind him, unnoticed and unacknowledged, like a shadow trailing a man who no longer knew she existed. "Stand up straight," Jason muttered under his breath. "We're meeting someone important tonight." Someone important. Someone he clearly valued more than his pregnant wife. Claire forced a small smile. "Can we talk about my appointment today?" "The doctor?" "Not now, Claire. Please don't start," he interrupted, eyes scanning the room. "Tonight isn't about you." Her throat tightened. The words hit harder than he intended, or maybe exactly as hard as he intended. Then the elevator doors opened, and the room changed. Bennett Hail stepped out, tall, crisp, coldly elegant in a charcoal suit. His presence commanded attention without a single word. Conversations quieted, glasses paused midair, and Jason's posture stiffened with a flicker of insecurity he hoped no one saw. Claire felt her breath catch. She recognized him instantly, the man who had watched her break at the gala just days earlier, the man who looked at her not with pity, but with something impossible to name. "Bennett." Jason forced a smile, too wide. "Didn't expect you tonight." "I'm sure you didn't," Bennett replied calmly, his eyes drifting not to Jason, but to Claire. Their gazes met, and in that brief second, Claire felt seen. Not as a burden, not as an inconvenience, but as a woman standing on the edge of a cliff she didn't choose. Jason stepped between them, blocking the moment. "This is Claire," he said flatly, as if presenting a minor employee. "She's here." Bennett's brow lifted slightly. "I know who she is." Jason blinked. Claire froze. Bennett extended a hand toward her. "Mrs. Donovan, we've crossed paths before. I'm glad to see you again." It's... Jason shot her a sharp look, as if her existence beside him was suddenly dangerous. And for the first time, Claire sensed a shift in the air, a quiet warning that Jason's control over her life was about to crack in ways none of them could predict. Claire Donovan had grown used to discomfort Jason's cold silences, the long nights waiting for him to come home, the way he corrected her in front of others. But nothing prepared her for the knife he was about to twist publicly, deliberately, and without a shred of regret. The investor dinner was nearing its peak when Jason raised his glass for a toast. Claire stood beside him, doing her best to steady her breathing. She could feel the strain in her abdomen, the faint tightening her doctor had warned her about. Stress. Too much stress. Tonight, Jason announced confidently, marks the beginning of a new chapter for Whitford Capital. It makes 4,000. Claire tried to smile, but the room suddenly felt colder. Jason continued, as we expand, image becomes more important than ever. Our partners expect leadership that reflects excellence from top to bottom. A few heads nodded. Then Jason turned slightly, giving Claire only the edge of his gaze. And sometimes, he added, that means making hard decisions, even in our personal lives. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Claire blinked. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Jason set down his glass with a sharp click. Effective next week, Claire and I will be separating. The air dropped out of the room. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Isn't she pregnant?" Claire's world spun. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. Heat rose to her face as every pair of eyes in the room landed on her, dissecting her humiliation in real time. "Jason," she whispered, voice trembling, "please don't. This is not the time for emotion," he cut in, smiling tightly at the guests. "Claire and I simply don't align with the company's future." Align. As if she were a malfunctioning piece of equipment he was discarding. Claire felt dizzy. Her hand instinctively moved toward her stomach. The tightening worsened. She swallowed hard, fighting the rising wave of panic. Across the room, Bennett Hail stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable, but his gaze focused, unwavering, burned through Jason's polished performance. When Jason stepped away to greet another investor, Claire slipped toward the terrace door, desperate for air. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she pushed it open, the cold breeze hitting her like a slap. She leaned against the railing, chest tight, trying to hold herself together. Inside, Jason laughed loudly, already celebrating the freedom he had claimed. She felt something inside her crack, the kind of crack that doesn't mend. What she didn't realize was that Bennett, silently watching from behind the glass, had just seen enough to make his first irreversible decision about her future. Claire stepped onto the terrace, the cold air cutting through her thin dress like a blade. She gripped the railing, willing her breath to steady. Her doctor's warning echoed in her head. Avoid emotional distress. But how does a woman avoid distress when her husband just discarded her in front of Boston's most powerful? Inside, laughter swelled again. Jason laughed harder. Claire's heart cracked a little more. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Please, not now," as a sharp spasm gripped her abdomen. Panic fluttered in her chest. She pressed a hand over her stomach, praying the baby could hear her. "Hold on. Mommy's trying." "Claire?" Her eyes snapped open. Bennett Hail stood in the doorway, the Amber City lights haloing behind him. He looked nothing like the ruthless businessman newspapers painted him to be. In this moment, he looked concerned. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he said gently. Claire tried to smile, but it trembled into something broken. "I'm fine. You're not." She hated how easily he saw it. Bennett stepped closer, lowering his voice so the guests inside couldn't hear. What Jason did in there was calculated, cruel. That wasn't a mistake, it was a performance. Claire swallowed, blinking back tears. He wanted them to see it. He wanted them to see me fail. "You didn't fail," Bennett said, surprising her with the softness in his tone. He did. Before she could answer, the door burst open. Jason stormed onto the terrace, jaw tight, irritation flashing across his face. Not concern, not regret, just inconvenience. "What are you doing out here?" he snapped. "The investors think you ran off crying." Claire flinched. Bennett's expression darkened. "I just needed air," she whispered. "You need to stop making scenes," Jason hissed. "You're embarrassing me." Embarrassing him. As if she weren't carrying his child, as if she weren't fighting to stay upright. A fresh wave of pain hit, sharp and deep. Claire gasped and grabbed the railing. Bennett stepped forward instantly. Jason didn't move. "Claire?" Bennett's voice steadied her. "Where does it hurt?" She shook her head, breath hitching. I think I need to go home, Jason scoffed. You'll be fine. You always get dramatic when you're stressed. Bennett's jaw tightened. She's not dramatic. She's in distress. Jason shot him a glare. Stay out of my marriage, Hail. This has nothing to do with you. But Bennett's eyes never left Claire. Actually, he said quietly, it has everything to do with her safety. Because in every bit, every bex. And in that moment, caught between the man who broke her and the man who saw her, Claire finally understood she was standing at the edge of something irreversible. Claire Donovan barely remembered the ride down the elevator. Her vision blurred at the edges, each breath thinner than the last. The pressure in her abdomen tightened again, sharp, warning, dangerous. She clung to the polished rail inside the elevator as Jason stood several feet away, arms crossed, scrolling his phone like nothing about this night concerned him. But Bennett Hail stood beside her, close enough to steady her if she slipped, close enough to notice every wince she tried to hide. When the elevator doors opened into the quiet lobby, Jason walked ahead without looking back. Bennett stayed beside her. You need a hospital, he said softly. Now. Claire shook her head weakly. I just need to lie down. Bennett didn't argue. He studied her face like he was memorizing each sign of pain. Claire, you can barely stand. Before she could answer, Jason turned around, irritation written across his features. For God's sake, Claire, stop dragging your feet. I have an after-dinner meeting. Claire blinked. Jason, we need to talk. The doctor. Jason cut her off with a scoff. I don't have time for your medical drama tonight. Medical drama. The words hit harder than the pain. The room tilted, and Claire swayed. Bennett's hand shot out immediately, gripping her elbow before she hit the marble floor. Jason didn't move. Not an inch. Seriously, Jason muttered. Claire, people are watching. Enough. Bennett's voice wasn't loud, but it stopped the room cold. He slipped an arm carefully around Claire's back, supporting her weight as she struggled to breathe. She's going home. Not with you. Jason stiffened. She's my wife. End quote. When quote for 7. For now, Bennett replied calmly. But you abandoned her publicly tonight. And in her condition, that makes you negligent. Negligent? Jason sputtered. Bennett didn't look at him. His focus remained on Claire, whose breaths had turned shallow and panicked. Claire, Bennett said gently, can you walk, or should I carry you? Her throat tightened at the kindness in his voice. I can try. She couldn't. The moment she took a step, her knees buckled. Bennett caught her effortlessly, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Jason's jaw dropped. Put her down. Claire, tell him. But Claire couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only rest her cheek against Bennett's chest as he carried her toward the waiting car. She's coming with me, Bennett said over his shoulder. And if you know what's good for you, Jason, you'll stay out of the way. And stand 2024. And as the car door closed behind her, Claire realized the night she lost everything might also be the night someone finally chose to save her. The ride to Bennett Hail's penthouse was quiet, but not peaceful. Claire lay half reclined in the back seat, her fingers trembling against the leather upholstery as she fought through waves of tightening in her abdomen. Bennett sat beside her, giving calm, steady instructions to his driver, every word clipped with urgency but never panic. Jason did not follow. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't even ask where she had gone. That truth hurt more than the cramps. Bennett reached for the blanket stored in the side compartment and draped it gently over Claire. Breathe slowly, he murmured. You're safe now. Safe. She hadn't felt safe in a long time. By the time they reached the penthouse, the city lights blurred behind a film of tears. The building itself was quiet, almost reverent, with marble floors and soft golden sconces lining the halls. Bennett walked with her to the elevator, one steady hand over her back. But the moment the doors closed, Claire whispered. He didn't even look back, Bennett. His jaw tightened. Some men don't realize what they're losing until it's already gone. Claire swallowed hard. And some men never cared to begin with. ID. When the elevator opened, the spacious penthouse greeted them floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. A clean, modern interior, everything warm and quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made the night's events echo louder. Bennett settled her onto a deep velvet sofa. I'll call my physician. You need monitoring tonight. Claire nodded weakly, but before he could step away, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Claire, we need to talk. I'm not your enemy. Naomi Blake. Her blood ran cold. The supermodel. Jason's new woman. The catalyst behind everything. Another message followed almost instantly. Jason is hiding things from both of us. If you want the truth, meet me tomorrow, alone. Claire's pulse stumbled. Trouble? Bennett asked quietly. She turned the screen toward him. His expression darkened not with jealousy, but with recognition. Naomi doesn't reach out unless she wants something, he said. Be careful, Claire. A woman like her doesn't pick sides, she picks opportunities. Claire looked down at the message again, her heart thudding painfully. If Naomi wanted to talk, if Naomi claimed Jason lied to her, too, then something was far more wrong than Claire ever understood. And for the first time, Claire realized the model might not just be Jason's affair, she might be the beginning of a truth that could shatter them all. Claire Donovan woke the next morning with a dull ache across her abdomen and a fog of exhaustion weighing down her limbs. She blinked against the soft morning light pouring into the penthouse, momentarily forgetting where she was. Then she heard Bennett Hail's low voice from the kitchen, speaking to someone on the phone, calm, composed, protective. She wasn't used to anyone sounding concerned for her. When she pushed herself upright, Bennett appeared almost instantly, as if he had been listening for any sign she was awake. Morning, he said gently. My physician will stop by in an hour. How are you feeling? Better, Claire lied. Just a little sore. Bennett studied her. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push. Instead, he handed her a warm mug. Ginger tea. Helps with nausea. Thank you, she murmured, surprised he knew that. After a few minutes, Bennett brought over a sleek laptop and set it on the coffee table. I have something I want to ask you. Claire stiffened. If this is about last night, I don't want to cause problems. It's not that. He slid the laptop toward her. This is. On the screen was a presentation flawed, messy, and full of red notes from Bennett's team. It's for a partnership proposal with a firm in San Francisco, Bennett explained. Your analytical work at Whitford was better than anything they produced. I want to see what you would do with this. Claire blinked. Me? Yes, you. Her instinct was to shrink back. I'm not important enough for something like this. Bennett's voice softened. Jason made you believe that. Not the truth. Her chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her that way, not without an agenda. Tentatively, Claire opened the presentation. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then her brain switched on the old part of her, the bright part, the part Jason had buried under years of belittling comments. She rewrote charts, refocused the messaging, rebuilt the flow. Her hands moved faster and faster, her breathing deepening, her posture shifting from tentative to sure. When she finally leaned back, she realized Bennett had been quietly watching her with a faint, impressed smile. You did that in under 2 hours, he said. My team has been stuck for a week. Thanks for watching. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest, pride, confidence, something she hadn't felt in years. I just saw what was missing. That, Bennett replied, is what makes you exceptional. Exceptional. She had never been called that before. And for the first time, Claire realized she wasn't just surviving, she was remembering who she used to be before Jason dimmed her light. By late afternoon, Claire Donovan felt a lightness in her chest she hadn't known in years. Finishing the proposal had awakened a part of her she thought motherhood, marriage, and Jason's relentless criticism had erased. For a moment, just a moment, she forgot the chaos of the previous night. But Bennett Hail hadn't forgotten anything. While Claire reviewed her edits, Bennett stepped into his office and closed the door. When he returned, he carried a thin black folder, sleek, unmarked, and ominously quiet. He set it gently on the coffee table in front of her. I need to show you something, he said. His tone made her stomach drop. Claire hesitated. Bennett, what is that? Proof. Bennett's jaw tightened. Proof that Jason's betrayal goes much deeper than an affair. Her pulse quickened. What do you mean? He opened the folder. Inside were documents stamped with Whitford Capital's logo contracts, transfers, email printouts. Claire scanned the first page, her eyes widening. It was her signature. Except, she never signed it. Her breath caught. This isn't real. I didn't approve any of this. I know, Bennett said. These transactions weren't just unethical, they're illegal. Jason moved client funds into offshore accounts and used your name as the approving officer. Claire's hands shook as she lifted the pages. Why would he do this to me? Because if the SEC investigates, you're the easiest person to blame, Bennett replied. You're his wife, pregnant, financially dependent. He assumed you wouldn't fight back. The room swayed. Her marriage hadn't just failed, she had been set up. Claire pressed a trembling hand to her stomach, rage and fear swirling in her chest. He used me. Bennett met her eyes steady, unwavering. He underestimated you. She looked up sharply. You're smarter than he ever allowed you to be, Bennett continued. And now that you know the truth, you have a choice. Let him destroy you, or fight. Claire swallowed hard. Fight how? He closed the folder. With me. Something warm foreign flared in her chest. Not romantic, not yet, but grounding, a kind of safety she had forgotten existed. You helped me last night, Claire whispered. But this is different. Yes, Bennett said softly. This is war. Her breath shuddered out. She didn't feel strong enough for war. She didn't feel ready. But as she looked at the forged signatures, the lies, the manipulation, strength sparked where fear had lived for months. And Claire realized that Jason hadn't just broken her heart, he had created the very woman who would one day bring him to his knees. Claire Donovan barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jason's forged signature next to hers, each stroke of the pen a silent betrayal. By morning, her pulse was unsteady, her thoughts tangled. She moved carefully through Bennett's penthouse, one hand instinctively covering her stomach as if shielding her baby from the world she was suddenly terrified of. The doorbell shattered the quiet. Bennett glanced up from the kitchen counter, instantly alert. Stay here, he murmured. Claire stood frozen as he walked to the entrance, but the moment the door opened, her blood turned to ice. 2 federal investigators stepped inside, badges catching the morning light. Ms. Claire Donovan? The lead agent asked. Claire's throat dried. Yes? We need you to come with us for questioning regarding suspicious activity connected to Whitford Capital. Her knees weakened. Questioning? But I didn't. It's routine, the agent said, not unkindly. But the sooner we begin, the better. Bennett stepped forward, calm but intense. She's not answering anything without representation. The agents exchanged a look, but didn't object. Bennett gently placed a hand at the small of Claire's back, guiding her toward the elevator. I'll be right behind you, he murmured. At the federal office, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Claire sat across from the investigators, her heart pounding. They laid out documents she'd never seen, accounts she'd never touched, authorizations she'd never made. Every page felt like a trap. Mrs. Donovan, these transfers were made under your credentials, one agent explained. We're giving you the chance to clarify your involvement. Claire swallowed hard. My husband used my identity without my knowledge. Do you have proof? The agent asked gently. She hesitated, but then remembered Bennett's folder. Yes, she whispered, I do. Hours later, when the questioning finally ended, Claire walked out of the building, feeling hollow but strangely lighter. The truth was out. The lies were no longer just hers to carry. Bennett waited on the sidewalk, leaning against his Mercedes, a storm of unreadable emotion in his eyes. When she reached him, she finally broke. He tried to make me the fall person, she whispered. He wanted me to take the blame. He won't succeed, Bennett said firmly. I won't let him. Claire's breath trembled, her hand pressing to her stomach as a small, reassuring flutter answered her panic. Her baby was still fighting. So would she. And as Bennett opened the car door for her, Claire understood something powerful. Jason had underestimated the wrong woman, and she was just beginning to rise. The sky over Manhattan was a bruised gray when Bennett Hail guided Claire back into the penthouse. She moved slowly, her body aching from hours of fear and interrogation. But as soon as the door closed behind them, Bennett handed her a glass of water and crouched to meet her eyes. You're safe now, he said quietly. No one had said those words to Claire in years, not with meaning. She sat on the couch, exhaling shakily. Her hand drifted instinctively to her stomach. The baby's faint movement was a whisper of reassurance, a reminder that she wasn't fighting alone. Bennett took a seat across from her, his posture strong, steady. The investigation will intensify, he said. Jason is going to panic. When men like him panic, they get reckless. Has it won? Claire's stomach twisted not from fear, but from the familiar shame of being tied to someone so destructive. He never loved me, she whispered. Not really. I think I was convenient. Bennett's expression softened. Convenience doesn't build a life. You did that on your own, Claire. You raised Ella. You built your career. You survived a man who tried to erase you. She blinked rapidly, emotions tightening her throat. I didn't survive. Not really. I let him dim every part of me. End quote. You're wrong, Bennett said. You're still here. That means you didn't break. The words hit her harder than any insult Jason had thrown her way. It felt like someone had reached into the rubble of her life and found a small, glowing piece she didn't know still existed. Then Bennett straightened, business settling over him like armor. I need you to see something else. He opened a secure folder on his laptop. Pages of financial projections, board memos, and market analysis filled the screen. This is my company's future, he said. A future I want you involved in. Not because I pity you, never that, but because your mind is the sharpest thing I've seen in years. Claire's eyes widened. You want me to work for you? I want you to lead with me, Bennett corrected. But we'll take it slow. Your health comes first. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. You really think I can do this? I don't think, he replied. I know. No one had ever believed in her like this, not even herself. Her phone buzzed. A single notification. A message from Jason. We're not done. Her blood ran cold. But when she looked up, Bennett was watching her with a fierce, quiet resolve. And Claire realized that for the first time since her world shattered, she wasn't facing the storm alone. Someone powerful was standing directly in its path with her name on his shield. Claire Donovan sat at the edge of Bennett's guest bed long after midnight, the city humming softly outside the window. She should have been asleep, should have been resting for the baby's sake, but her mind refused to quiet. Jason's message still glowed on her phone like a threat carved in steel. We're not done. A chill crawled down her spine. Just then, her phone buzzed again, another message, but not from Jason this time. Claire, please. We need to meet. I'm not your enemy. Naomi Blake, the woman who helped destroy her marriage. The woman Jason flaunted beside him while Claire was losing blood on the gala stairs. Why would she reach out? Claire stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Why would I ever trust you? The reply came instantly. Because Jason lied to me too. And he's planning something that will ruin you. I have proof. Claire's breath hitched. She hesitated, but curiosity and fear pushed her forward. Meet me where? Pier 17. Tomorrow, alone. Before Claire could react, Bennett appeared in the doorway, wearing a dark t-shirt, his expression alert. Couldn't sleep? No, Claire whispered. I got another message. When she showed him, Bennett read it once, then again, slower. A muscle in his jaw ticked. Naomi doesn't do remorse, he said. If she wants to talk to you, she either needs protection or wants revenge. On Jason? Claire asked. On anyone who threatens her image. His voice cooled. Jason's downfall could drag her down too. If she's flipping sides, it's not out of kindness. Claire exhaled shakily. Should I meet her? Bennett sat beside her, not touching her, but close enough for her to feel his steadiness. You don't go alone, he said firmly. Not while you're carrying a child. Not while Jason is desperate. He paused. But you should hear her out. Desperate people make mistakes and they reveal truths. Claire nodded, fingers tightening over her stomach. If she has proof, it could clear my name. It could destroy Jason, Bennett added calmly. A thought struck Claire, dark, cold, unsettling. What if he's planning something worse? What if he won't stop until I'm... She couldn't finish the sentence. Bennett's voice dropped to a quiet, protective promise. He won't touch you. Not while I'm here. Not while you're under my name. Her breath trembled, and as Claire leaned back against the headboard, she understood that this meeting with Naomi Blake might not just expose Jason, it might uncover the final truth that would turn her entire world upside down. Claire Donovan stood at the mirror in Bennett Hale's penthouse guest room, her pulse fluttering beneath her skin. Sunlight poured across the hardwood floors, catching the faint curve of her stomach beneath the soft blouse Bennett's assistant had brought that morning. She looked different. Not polished or glamorous, but awake, present, like a woman slowly remembering who she was before someone taught her to shrink. She didn't recognize the look in her own eyes, and for the first time, that wasn't a bad thing. Bennett knocked gently before entering. He held a folder in one hand and a warm steadiness in his gaze. "The meeting with Naomi is in 2 hours," he said. "We'll go together. My security team will stay nearby." Claire nodded. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her sleeves. "Bennett, why are you helping me like this? You don't owe me anything." He paused. The silence stretched, thick and honest. "I owe you the truth," he said finally. "Years ago, in a joint project, you created the analytics model that saved my company millions. Jason took credit. I knew it then, but I didn't intervene." His voice softened. "I should have." Claire blinked, stunned. "You? You knew?" "Yes." He exhaled. "And watching you be humiliated while knowing your brilliance was buried, that didn't sit right with me." Her throat tightened. "Jason convinced me I wasn't good enough, that I was lucky he married me." End quote. Bennett stepped closer, not invading, but offering space she'd never been given. "He didn't marry you because you were lucky. He married you because you made him look stable, respectable, human. He needed your light, Claire. He just never expected you to realize it." Claire swallowed hard. "I feel stupid for letting him shrink me." "You weren't stupid," Bennett said. "You were loving. There's a difference." "I think strike seven." The words hit deep, shaking loose emotions she'd kept buried beneath years of condescension. Then Bennett handed her the folder. "These are the internal files Naomi might reference today. I want you to see the whole picture before she speaks." Claire's eyes scanned the documents, emails between Jason and unknown contacts, transactions marked confidential, coded payments she didn't understand. But one thing was clear. Jason's corruption went far beyond their marriage. "He used my name for this," she whispered. "Yes," Bennett said, "but today we start taking it back." Claire placed a hand on her stomach, breathing slowly, deliberately. "I'm terrified." Bennett nodded. "Courage doesn't exist without fear. And you, Claire, you're braver than you think." She lifted her chin. For the first time in years, she believed it. And as she followed Bennett out the door, Claire realized she was stepping not into danger, but into the beginning of the woman she had never been allowed to become. Pier 17 was colder than Claire expected. The wind off the water nipped at her cheeks as she stood beside Bennett, who kept a careful distance, close enough to protect, far enough not to overwhelm. His security team lingered in the background, discreet but alert. Naomi Blake arrived 10 minutes late, wrapped in a beige trench coat, sunglasses covering half her face. But even behind the glamour, Claire sensed something different, fear, sharp and restless. Naomi glanced around before stepping closer. "You didn't come alone." Claire lifted her chin. "I'm done walking into traps." Naomi smirked softly. "Good, because Jason is setting one for you." Those words sliced straight through her. "Explain," Claire said. Naomi pulled out her phone, swiping to a series of screenshots, emails from Jason, messages to intermediaries, coded notes regarding offshore accounts. But the most damning part was the last message. "Claire signs everything. She doesn't even read it. If the investigation lands, she'll take the fall." Claire felt her knees weaken. "He planned this?" Naomi nodded. "From the moment he knew you were pregnant. He said you'd be too emotional, too distracted to notice. But then I found out he was using my name in side deals too. I won't go down for him." Bennett's jaw tightened. "We'll take this to the authorities." Naomi's gaze flicked to him. "Careful, Hail. Jason thinks you're behind the investigation. He's spiraling, desperate." Claire's heartbeat stumbled. "Desperate enough to hurt me?" Naomi hesitated, a telling silence. Before anyone could speak again, the sharp click of shoes echoed behind them. Claire froze as a familiar voice cut through the harbor wind. "So this is where you've been hiding." Jason Whitford stepped forward, eyes bloodshot with fury, jealousy, and something much darker. He looked at Claire, not Naomi, not Bennett, her. "You ran off with him," Jason spat. "After everything I've done for you?" Claire's breath caught. "Everything you've done? Jason, you set me up for felony charges." Jason's expression twisted. "I did what I had to do. You were dead weight." And Fortman. Bennett stepped between them, calm but threatening. "You need to leave. Now." Jason's eyes darted to Bennett's hand, hovering protectively near Claire. Something snapped inside him. "You think she's yours? She's my wife." "Until the paperwork clears," Bennett said coolly. "And trust me, Claire is not coming back to you." Jason lunged forward. Bennett moved faster. He blocked Jason with one arm, forcing him back with effortless strength. Jason stumbled, caught off guard by a man who refused to break. Security closed in. Jason glared at Claire, voice cracking with rage. "You'll regret this." But Claire didn't flinch. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of him. And as Bennett guided her away, Claire knew this confrontation wasn't the end. It was the moment Jason realized the woman he tried to break was rising beyond his reach. Jason Whitford didn't disappear after Pier 17. If anything, the encounter cracked something volatile inside him, and like every man who has coasted too long on power without consequence, he mistook fear for control. 2 days later, Claire Donovan watched breaking news scroll across Bennett Hale's massive living room TV. Whitford capital stock plunges after internal leak. CEO under scrutiny for financial misconduct. Her breath caught. Images of Jason being swarmed by reporters flashed on screen, his hair disheveled, his polished confidence replaced by frantic denial. "This is only the beginning," Bennett murmured beside her, arms crossed as he studied the report. "The files Naomi gave you were enough to trigger an audit. The SEC is moving fast." Claire swallowed. "He'll blame me." "He'll try," Bennett said, "but he no longer has the power to make it stick." Still, Claire couldn't shake a cold heaviness in her chest. She had once loved that man. She had once built a life with him. Watching his empire crack felt like watching a version of herself crumble again, but this time, she wasn't the one shattering. The doorbell interrupted her thoughts. Bennett's security checked the hallway, then opened the door. Her little girl, Ella, ran in her curls, bouncing, eyes lighting up when she saw her mother. Claire dropped to her knees, gathering her daughter into her arms. The tension in her chest finally loosened, but the moment Claire lifted her head, Bennett saw it, the shadow passing across her face. Relief and sorrow tangled together. "You're safe with Bennett, Mommy?" Ella whispered. Claire nodded, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe." Later that afternoon, Bennett invited Claire into his office. He gestured for her to sit, then slid a document toward her, a polished, elegant job contract. "I want you to join Hale Industries officially," he said. "Director of Strategic Development." Claire froze. "Bennett, I don't know if I'm ready." "You are." His voice was firm. "You proved it the moment you rebuilt that proposal, and I want you in a position where Jason can never control your life again." Her eyes filled. Not with fear, but with something stronger, something she hadn't felt in years. Before she could respond, Bennett's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his expression hardened. "It's the SEC," he said quietly. "They just raided Whitford Capital. Jason's hiding assets." Claire exhaled slowly, a tremor running through her. Jason wasn't just falling, he was unraveling. And as Bennett closed his office door, Claire realized her rise had already begun, long before Jason even knew she had wings. Claire Donovan woke before dawn, a sharp cramp tearing through her abdomen. For a moment she lay still, frozen in fear. Then another wave hit deeper, heavier, terrifying. She struggled to sit up, clutching her stomach. "Not now. Please, not now." She swung her legs off the bed and tried to stand, but her knees buckled. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. "Claire?" Bennett's voice came from the hallway, sharp with alarm. He reached her side in seconds, just as she doubled over. "It hurts," she whispered, breath shaking. "Something's wrong. The baby." His face paled, but his movements were steady. "We're going to the hospital. Now." "I weigh." He scooped her into his arms before she could protest. Her fingers clutched at his shirt as he carried her toward the elevator. Every jolt of pain made her vision flicker. "Stay with me, Claire," he murmured as the elevator descended. "Just breathe. I've got you." Outside, his driver held the car door open, but Bennett didn't hand her off. He climbed into the back seat with her still in his arms, holding her through every contraction-like surge. Claire pressed her face against his shoulder, tears slipping free. "I'm going to lose him," she choked. "You're not," Bennett said fiercely. "Your son is strong, just like you." The ride to the hospital blurred into sirens, streetlights, and Bennett's steady voice anchoring her through the pain. Nurses whisked her into a triage room the moment they arrived. Bennett refused to remain outside quietly, but firmly insisting he was family until they allowed him in. Inside, machines beeped. Doctors spoke in calm, urgent tones. "Severe stress," one murmured. "Possible placental tearing." another said. We need to stabilize her immediately. Claire's breath fractured. Please, please save my baby. Bennett stepped closer, gently gripping her hand. Look at me, Claire. Don't listen to anything else, just listen to my voice. Her panic slowed. Just enough. Minutes stretched like hours until the doctor finally stepped back from the monitor. The heartbeat is strong, she announced. Your son is fighting. You're not losing him tonight. A sob tore from Claire's chest. All the fear she'd held in for weeks broke free. Bennett exhaled shakily, brushing a hand through his hair. He looked like a man who had been holding his breath underwater. When the room emptied and Claire lay quietly, exhausted but safe, Bennett whispered, You scared me today. She looked at him, eyes glassy. I was scared too, as resin. But his next words sank deeper than the pain, deeper than the fear. You're not going through another night like this alone. Not ever. And as Claire drifted into sleep, she realized something breathtaking: her son had chosen to live, and maybe, just maybe, she was finally choosing life too. By the next morning, the world outside Claire Donovan's hospital room had already begun to shift. News outlets buzzed with rumors, analysts dissected Whitford Capital's implosion, and Jason's once untouchable reputation was unraveling thread by thread. But the real explosion, the one that would detonate everything, was about to come from the person no one expected. Naomi Blake. Claire was resting when Bennett stepped inside, holding his phone with an expression halfway between disbelief and grim satisfaction. You need to see this, he said quietly. He pulled up a live stream from a major news network. The headline made Claire sit up straighter, heart thudding. Supermodel Naomi Blake breaks silence on Whitford scandal. Naomi sat before a cluster of microphones, looking poised, yet rattled. Claire watched as the woman who'd once smiled beside her husband now trembled under the weight of truth. I'm here, Naomi began, because I finally understand the kind of man Jason Whitford is, and I won't protect him anymore. If you do it at Mar, Claire's breath caught. Naomi continued, voice steadying. I have provided federal investigators with emails, proof of fraudulent transfers, and messages showing Jason intended to use his wife Claire Donovan as the scapegoat for crimes he orchestrated. A wave of murmurs swept through the press. She wasn't done. He told me Claire was weak, that no one would believe her. He mocked her pregnancy. He said a woman like her was disposable. Naomi's voice faltered, then sharpened like a blade. I will not let him destroy her, not after what he tried to do to me. Claire felt her throat tighten, not with sympathy, but with a strange, complex shock. She hadn't expected Naomi to be a hero. She hadn't expected her to be anything but another wound. But in this moment, Naomi was detonating Jason's life from the inside out. Bennett muted the phone. This will accelerate everything. Claire pressed a shaking hand to her stomach. She didn't have to do that. No, Bennett agreed. But she wanted the world to know the truth, and she wanted to save herself. Either way, it helps you. Before Claire could respond, Bennett sat beside her. Jason will spiral harder now. His alliances are gone, his company is bleeding, and the narrative is shifting in your favor. Claire stared at her trembling hands. I never wanted revenge. You didn't seek it, Bennett said gently. You survived long enough for the truth to reveal itself. If we want to. The sun spilled across her hospital blankets, warm and new. And for the first time, Claire realized Jason wasn't just losing control, he was losing the audience he once fooled, the empire he once ruled, and the women he once believed he owned. The invitation arrived quietly, delivered to Bennett Hail's penthouse in a crisp white envelope, sealed with the crest of the Manhattan Financial Oversight Council. A formal request for Claire Donovan to appear as a key witness in the emergency hearing regarding Jason Whitford's misconduct. For years, Claire had walked behind Jason, silent, dimmed, invisible. Tomorrow, she would walk into a room where every powerful eye would be on her. She stared at the letter, breath trembling. I don't know if I can do this. Bennett took the envelope gently from her hands. Claire, you've survived worse than a room full of wealthy men who finally need to hear your truth. Truth. She had spent years swallowing it until it calcified in her chest. Now she had to speak it aloud. The next morning, Claire dressed in a simple navy dress, elegant, quiet, but strong. Bennett insisted on escorting her, though he walked beside her rather than leading the way. His presence was steady, grounding, protective, without suffocating. When the doors opened to the council chamber, cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Executives whispered her name, surprised to see the woman they once dismissed now walking with unshakable purpose. Jason was already seated at the defense table. He looked nothing like the man she married. He looked cornered, sweating, twisting anxiously in his chair. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Claire," he breathed, almost pleading, "don't do this. You don't understand." But Claire walked right past him. The hearing began. Officials questioned Jason first, and he buckled quickly, stumbling over lies that used to come effortlessly. Then the chairman turned to Claire. "Mrs. Donovan, please explain your involvement." Claire rose. The room fell silent. Her voice didn't shake. "My involvement," she said steadily, "was being married to a man who believed my silence was his shield. A man who forged my signature on illegal transfers because he assumed I wouldn't fight back." A ripple moved across the chamber. Jason paled. Claire continued, "I was loyal, I was patient, I was blind, and he used all of that to build a story where I was the villain. But I'm done letting someone else narrate my life." Jason slammed a hand on the table. Lies, she knew. But the chairman raised a hand. "Enough, Mr. Whitford. We have evidence from multiple sources, including Miss Blake. Bidas, also D." Jason's mouth fell open. Naomi, seated behind Claire, gave a tiny nod. Claire stepped back, heart pounding but light. Free. The room saw her, heard her, believed her. Bennett's eyes met hers across the chamber, full of pride, not possession. And as Jason's world collapsed under the weight of Claire's truth, she understood something profound. She hadn't just testified, she had reclaimed her voice. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. By late afternoon, the council released its findings. Jason Whitford was guilty of financial manipulation, fraud, and intentional framing of his spouse. His assets were frozen, his title revoked, his public reputation once polished like marble shattered beyond repair. Claire Donovan watched the broadcast from Bennett Hail's penthouse, her hand resting gently on her stomach. For the first time in months, she breathed without fear pressing against her ribs. Jason was escorted out of the building in handcuffs. Handcuffs. A man who once dictated her every step was now stumbling through a sea of cameras, exposed and alone. Bennett stood behind her, not touching, but present with the quiet strength she'd come to rely on. "It's over," he said softly. But Claire shook her head. "No, it's finally beginning." 2 weeks later, spring sunlight warmed the Boston Gardens, where Bennett had arranged a small private ceremony. Not extravagant, not loud, not shaped by the expectations of the world, but intimate and true. Claire wore a simple white dress that floated around her growing belly. Ella held a bouquet of baby's breath as she twirled through the grass, giggling with the freedom of a child who finally felt the tension leave her mother's body. Bennett waited beneath an archway of soft ivory roses. When Claire reached him, his eyes glistened with something deeper than devotion, respect, admiration. The understanding of a man who had seen her broken and still believed she was built for greatness. "You don't have to do this," Claire whispered, tears softening her words. "I know," Bennett replied, "but I want to. Not because you need saving, Claire. You saved yourself long before I arrived. I just want to walk beside the woman who learned to walk alone." Her heart swelled. Slowly, she nodded. They exchanged vows, quiet, honest, unafraid, and for the first time in her life, Claire felt chosen for who she truly was, not for what she could hide or fix. After the ceremony, as the sun dipped low, Claire held Ella close and pressed a hand over her unborn son. A new family, a new chapter, a new name she wasn't afraid to claim. Later, as the guests drifted away, Claire stepped aside to breathe in the evening air. Bennett joined her, slipping his hand into hers. "You made it," he whispered. Claire smiled. "I didn't think I would." "That's the thing about women like you," Bennett said. "You survive storms that were meant to drown you." Her eyes softened, and Claire realized the truest lesson of all. She hadn't risen because someone lifted her. She had risen because she finally remembered she could stand. And just like that, our story comes to a close. But you, my wonderful friend, watching this, you're still here with me, aren't you? If you've stayed until this very moment, then something in Claire's journey must have touched your heart in a way that words alone can't explain. And maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of your own strength. Life has a way of breaking us open before it lets the light in. The Stoics used to say, the obstacle is the way, meaning that the hardest moments are often the ones shaping us into who we were meant to become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Claire's healing began the moment she understood that truth. And that's what I want you to take with you tonight. You are stronger than the storm you survived. You deserve the kind of peace that doesn't ask you to shrink. And you are allowed to rise, even if someone once convinced you that you couldn't. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but so these stories of healing and justice can reach someone who needs them as much as you did. We're in this together. You're not alone.